Hello everyone. In today's video, I'm going to take a look again in the Queen B3 Nimzo, but not like in the previous videos when I looked at games which were played quite a long time ago. Today's game was played 2 days ago in the Chess Olympiad in Budapest by the very strong Lithuanian Grandmaster Pultinevicius with white, and so it was the match Lithuania against Honduras. So let's see how it went. Finally, no transpositions. We are straight getting into the Queen B3 Nimzo. Black played C5, which is the probably only theoretically correct move against Queen B3. So D takes C5, Knight C6. Once again, the correct way from black. In some other videos, I will show what happens if black plays Knight A6, which is extremely common, or takes back immediately on C5, which actually is also fine. So in this game, it was Knight C6, Knight F3, short castle. So black played really nicely up to this moment, and we already have the first critical moment. So if you want to play this variation with white, you must know that in this position A3 is the correct move order. It may look a little bit illogical because black anyway wants to recapture on C5 at some moment, but the problem is that if you go bishop to G5, then after H6 there is no real good response for white, because if we take, we give up the pair of bishops, and after queen takes on F6, not only we gave up the bishop pair, but bishop takes C3 is an idea, and also bishop takes C5 is an idea. So this is really not great for white, but it's still better than what could happen after bishop H4. Now black breaks the pin with G5, and after bishop to G3 there is Knight E4. And I already showed such ideas for black in previous videos, like F5 can come, there is pressure on the C3 knight, queen may come to A5, sometimes also knight takes C5. So yeah, black is already better in this position. So in order to avoid all of this, we have to get rid of the pin on the knight. So, and after bishop takes on C5, now white plays bishop G5. So now H6 with bishop H4 G5 is just really bad for black, because after bishop G3 there is no follow-up on E4, because the knight is not pinned, so there is no knight E4. Black just weakened their king, and they're already much worse. So that's the point of A3. So bishop C5, bishop G5, and black played knight D4. Again, a pretty good move, very decent variation for black. He's trading the knight on D4, and now the bishop is covering on F6, so the queen is free to go away from the pin, and also the bishop puts some pressure on C3. Normally, white plays E3 here, so it is attacking the bishop, and it looks like that this is the problem of black's play, that okay, if now takes, then queen C3, and white just has the pair of bishops with a very nice position. But black has a very specific idea, again, mainly known from the 4 queen C2 Nimzo Indian, that in this position there is this move of queen A5. So it gets out from the pin and attacks this bishop on G5, which is loose currently, and also puts pressure on C3. So white doesn't really have a big choice here. Again, bishop F6, bishop F6 is just very bad, giving the bishop pair for black, and also removing the bishop H4 is simply not good, because black can just double our pawns, and This is not what we want. So on queen a5, e takes d4 is the move, and now queen g5. Now in a very similar position in the queen c2 nimzo, the move is queen d2 to offer a trade to this queen, and after the trade the king is coming to the game, and that endgame is like maybe slightly better for white. But here we don't have this option, and our development is a little bit difficult because the queen puts pressure on g2, so we cannot develop the f1 bishop, and castling long side is also impossible because the queen covers that square as well. So in the course, a new idea was recommended, and white followed this idea. Event knight to b5. Actually, as a recording, I made a mistake by not checking, the times of the game, that how much time was spent for this move, because then, I could say whether it was a preparation from white. But okay, you can check it also for yourself. I will also check it after the video. It would be very interesting to know. Probably I will also give title to the video in the way, once I checked, and then I can see whether it was really preparation or not. So the point is that the knight wants to go to d6. And if the knight is on d6, it blocks black's position pretty well. Like this bishop will be stuck, and that means that the rook will be also stuck. But black has quite a few different options in this moment. So you can check all of those out in the course. In this game, black decided to play d5, which is a very natural move. So basically the point is that he puts the pawn on d5, so the knight cannot blockade it. And now, of course, knight d6 makes no sense, since black just takes and the knight has no outpost on d6. So white played c5. And this is the whole idea. Now the knight can go to d6, while being protected. And the next step for white, and that's why it's really good that the knight disappeared from the third rank, is to bring the queen to e3 or g3, offer the trade of queens, and just have a very nice endgame with the queenside majority. So therefore black has to be kind of fast here, and again, like very logical move, e5. So black is trying to open the position while the king is in the center. But white is ready for this by queen e3, which was played in the game, and it is still recommended in the course to play like this. So the problem is that the queen is under attack and the pawn is under attack, so black is pretty much forced to trade queens, which is like not ideal, but there is really nothing better. So it's possible to try something like queen h5, but of course we don't take with the queen because then we lose to the pin. But we take with the pawn, and knight g4, and one last precise move is needed here for white, because very, very strangely enough, even computer did not see it immediately that queen d4, which looks super logical, and it's just a nice square for the queen covering all the pawns. There is knight takes h2, pretty much self-pinning, but actually black has the strongest threat with knight f3 check. And there is no comfortable defense against it, strangely enough. So king can go to d2, it's still knight f3. Bishop can go to e2, it's still knight f3. So computer comes up with moves like rook g1, which is like completely ridiculous. So on knight g4, it's better to go queen to g3, just threatening to go bishop e2, and black has nothing better than to trade queens, or if they go knight e5, white can just play bishop e2 castle and have a much better position with the queenside majority versus this weak pawn on d5. So on queen e3, black took on e3, f e3. This endgame is like, you know, what white is dreaming about in general in this line. So what is the point here is that there is a c5 pawn. It gives huge space advantage and majority on the queen side. So the plan is very easy. Push the pawns forward, put the knight on d6, and then promote if possible. So really, that's all white should do. And black has to be very precise in order to create some counterplay or to make it more difficult for white. And actually, black did so in the game. So huge credit to the black player. He really played very well. So he first of all took on d4, ed4, and with this he opened the e-file, so the rook could create some problems for white. So now king d2 and knight e4 check. It's very important not only because, you know, it's a check and it gives a tempo, but it covers d6 square, so our knight cannot jump to d6. Of course, black has some other problems, you know, since the rook came to e8, knight to c7 is also an idea for white, so that should be addressed as well. So now king c2. And yeah, it would be really easy to make a mistake, I would say, with black in this position, but again, the correct move was played. So for example, if bishop f5, trying to do some discover check on the king, then simply bishop d3, and white's position is close to winning actually, because there is no counterplay for black. Probably rook f1 is at some moment, and white will just start pushing the pawn. So like, it's not winning in the sense that we are winning some material, but simply you can see that this is black's majority. It's not going anywhere, and white is already as a pawn on c5. So black played knight f2 to get a tempo on the rook and prepare bishop f5 with a check. So it's a pretty nice idea. So if white would go rook g1, then just bishop f5, king b3, rook e3 checks, so gets away from knight c7, king a2, and knight e4. And black's pieces are pretty good in this position. There is no bishop d3, there is no knight d6, so black is actually doing very fine. But white was also playing great. He played knight to d6. So he was not forced to move the rook. He decided to attack this other one on e8, which could have led to massive trades and exchanges, but it didn't. Black opted for rook e3 in this position, which is probably a mistake. Not for the engine, but for human play, I would say rook e3 is, you know, just very risky. So it would have been better to go to knight h1, but it's also not easy for sure. So now knight takes on e8. Again, if nothing spectacular happens and the knight comes back to d6, I mean, it's almost winning for white. So bishop f5 check. Looks like black is winning material, but white has bishop to d3. So attacking the rook here. So now black must take on d3, because if a rook takes on e8, bishop f5, then the knight is still in trouble. So this is not good. Bishop d3, trade. King takes d3. And one more intermediate move is needed for black. And the rook endgame is just... This one is a pretty bad version for black. Like, you will see the main line. Black is like down a move or two. And white again just will push the pawn and most likely win quite easily. So king d3, knight f2, king e2, rook e8, king f2. And not only, you know, it's black's turn in this position, but the king is on f2 and not on d3. So on d3 it's just fantastic, protecting the only weakness in our position. So our rook is just free to support the pawns. And the position kind of wins by itself, but here it's not so easy. So for example, black can play f5, b4, king f7, so both sides play quite logically. Black is also trying to push a little bit on the king side, but mainly they need the king to stop the pawns. And now b5. So this is what white should do. Like, cannot bring the king, so has to push the pawns. And now it's pretty important that there is no king e7, because white can go for the pawn endgame. And even though there is only one move which is winning here, it's not that difficult. This is not enough to win the game here, because black's king will be in time to stop the pawns. So our king needs an entry square on the king side or on e5. And for that we need to play h4. So if white would play some inaccurate move like a4, then just g5. And thanks to all the control here, the king cannot enter the position, and it's just a draw. So h4 is a must, and okay, after g6, king f3, h6, sorry, king f3, h6, threatening g5, but just not in time. The king is entering the position with the win, and similarly in case of h6, threatening g5, now white plays h5, king goes and wins easily. So king e7 is not good, therefore white has to include rook e4 first, and now white is not protecting but goes rook to c1. So of course if black takes, then the pawn is promoting. King is not in time to catch the pawn. So rook c1, king e7 is a must, and now c6, and bc6. Now bc6 would be a mistake, since after king d8 the king is blockading the pawn, and black is completely fine, maybe even better. But the rook takes on c6, rook takes d4, rook c7 check, king 6, rook a7. So this type of endgame we could get. White is better because of connected pass pawns, the rook is hitting the 7th rank, but the computer can defend this position. So this would have been the correct way to play for black. I believe it's pretty difficult to go for this rook endgame from this position here, but this was probably the better chance. So in the game it was rook e3 and rook g1. So what happened now is that white managed to get the knight here, and bishop f5 is not a check. Still, black continued in a nice way, so played knight e4. Simply they have to, he has to trade the knight on d6, because otherwise the bishop cannot develop and so on, so basically cannot move. And now knight e4 was possible, but knight c8 I believe is a nice decision from white, because now it's a bishop versus knight position, and generally the bishop is stronger when the game is going on two sides, and like clearly both sides have majorities where they want to promote pawns, so it will go on two sides normally. So white went b4, there is no time to waste, pawn should go forward, and black already made a losing mistake. I mean, so far it's move 22. It's impossible to say anything, criticize black's play. And only one bad move. I mean, it's not even a bad move, it's a super logical move. Just it needed some preparation. So the only move according to the computer which more or less holds equality is king to f8. And why it is super difficult? Because the idea is not to bring the king. I mean, that's just very slow, and white can play like bishop d3, trade the rook, and have a much better position. So that's not the idea. The idea is simply not to get issues on the back rank. And I mean, to see in this position that you know, when you have a knight and rook on the e file, that you actually have to cover e8. That's quite tough. So black played rook c6. You will see why it was crucial to cover the back rank. So black wants to come rook f6 or maybe rook h6 to create some play here with the rook. Very logical move. White played bishop to d3. And I believe at this moment black already saw the problems. So he went knight to f2. The problem is that rook f6, which looks very logical with the idea of rook f2, then white can simply play rook f1 to stop this idea. And now if knight f2, with a lot of ideas attacking the bishop and the pawn, is simply not that effective because there is rook to e1. And now you can see that if in this line the king would be on f8, it would cover the e8 square. Now, if this bishop is taken, it's simply back rank mate. So this made actually a huge difference. Now black should play rook e6, and after trade bishop b5. Even though black can take a pawn, the problem is again that, you know, there is a mate threat, there is the threat of rook e7 and collecting and winning. And with king f8, it would be all completely different. So really tough detail to see, but that was the defense for black. Here knight f2, again trying to do something with this bishop, but the same problem is there. In this line it's also highlighted that, you know, because of this back rank problem, white is just much better. So he went rook e6, now trade, and yeah, black's pieces are here, but unfortunately our pawns are running on the other side of the board. So bishop f5 was played, g6, king d2, one more nice move, rook e7, and rook f1. So we are getting into the rook endgame, which I showed earlier, when the king is on the correct place, when it can easily protect the d4 pawn. So black went knight e4, bishop takes, rook takes, king d3, king f8. And yeah, this position is quite close to being like completely lost, but for some reason after b5, f5, here white played g3, which is a little bit too slow. So he could have just played rook c1 with the idea of playing c6. And since black has no counterplay against the d pawn, and you know it's very slow to go for these pawns, and it can be always protected, I don't really know what was the problem here. So if king e8, c6 takes, again not with the pawn because the king catches the pawn, but rook enters, and then this is weak, this is weak. This pawn can march forward. So yeah, this looks pretty hopeless for black. But white played g3, giving some chance for black. King e7, a4, king d7, a5, king c7. So the king did manage to reach the queenside. And the problem is that it's not so easy to open a file for this rook. So white went rook b1 with some ideas of b6. And here black lost the game with the move of f4. So he's trying to create counterplay, but actually what he does, that he will open some files for the rook to enter, and that's just, you know, with pawns such advanced, the rook entering, that's just a winning rook endgame. So black should have simply played king c8. Basically a waiting move, and also if b6 comes now, then possession can be closed by a6. So this is why it doesn't want. So probably a6 should be tried from white, but after ba, threat is rook b7, but rook e7 is still closes it pretty well. So winning this position would have required a lot of work from white, and I am not even sure that objectively it's winning. So just because of this one slower move of g3, it made things quite tricky. So in the game it was f4, which already loses, and it was quite easy for white. So gf, rook f4, now played b6, takes, king c6, and rook e1. So that's the problem, that the rook is coming into the position targeting the weak pawns. Rook f3, rook e3. And the pawn endgame is hopeless because the king has to guard this c6 break, and in the other side our king just enters and takes these pawns. So black went rook f2, rook e7. Yeah, of course this is not a close race between these pawns. White's pawns are just there to promote, and black is nowhere near. So rook h3 was played, king e2, rook h4, rook c7, rook h2, and king f3. Like, black is running out of checks, and he resigned at this point because b7 is coming and the pawns are just promoting. So I believe a very high level game from both sides. 1-1 mistake, more or less. But unfortunately for black, the position he got out of the opening was, it contained more long-term risk because of white's majority on the queen side. So that was quite dangerous. But yeah, I believe a pretty nice game from both players, and certainly a good model game for the queen b3 Nimzo. So thanks a lot for watching, and see you soon with some other video.